so I do worry that maybe, Silicon Valley will be the next Rust Belt if things continue in this direction. I'm so excited for this. I was hoping I was going to get an advance copy.
Oh, you do? That's it.
So
author's copy,
I've heard so many good things about this book, and I know you were on the road doing a ton of interviews, but I'd love to hear from your mouth, what was it like writing this book?
A real homecoming. Because I left the region 20 years ago, and then coming back and seeing it with fresh eyes, and driving from city to city and doing dozens of interviews with town leaders and entrepreneurs and venture capitalists and mayors and economic developers and the universities as well, seeing this tech heartland beginning to take shape. So it was kind of surprising to me in a way, and made me want to write this book. I've been spotting a lot of trends throughout my career. I wrote about China when nobody expected China tech to be anything. It was a joke, right? It's not a joke anymore. So the Heartland is going to surprise people too. It's early in its progress, but it's definitely happening, and the foundation is being laid right now. So I was in there as a journalist doing my interviews and taking notes and having a great time during COVID for a year of travel from market to market, 26 cities, 10,000 miles.
Well, and I'm also excited too, not every story in this book is a success story. You talk to people who do not have internet connection at home.
Yeah.
And so you have both venture capitalists who have a lot of money and they're putting a lot of money in the region, and then you talk to people that have to drive to their grandma's house to even, check their email.
That's true. Everyone from Drive Capital in Columbus, Ohio, which has had a major impact in the region, with $1.2 billion of venture capital they've invested in dozens of startups. They really are making a difference. And it's interesting that the founders came from Silicon Valley, right?
Yeah, very legendary Silicon Valley VCs who, same as us, have decided to, visit home or go back more frequently. And then, some people end up buying a house and moving back and opening their own shop. And so I think we're going to keep seeing a lot of these trends of people that either discover the region for the first time by working remotely and getting an Airbnb in a Cleveland or a Pittsburgh, or folks that want to be closer to family.
That's true. There's also the flip side of the story, like you mentioned, places of Appalachia where there's no internet yet. I remember interviewing a young entrepreneur who had to go to his grandmother's house to do the interview with me over Zoom. It was kind of amazing, but it's people like that who have the guts to stand up against these kind of disadvantages and move ahead. And those are the people who are going to get ahead. And, I think the Heartland has a lot of grit, has a lot of determination, and the culture of the people is going to come through.
Yeah.
And I know you know that too, because you're from Ohio.
Well,
like me.
and I'm reminded of this. I'm of Ukrainian descent. Both sides of the family are Ukrainian, and back in the day, people moved to America for a greater opportunity.
Yeah.
I remember my grandfather was sweeping floors in a steel mill, and people were so grateful to come to America and to have work.
Yeah.
Now we're seeing there's so much poverty in this part of the country, where there are people that are just trying to find ways to have access to internet. And so I think these stories are so important to be told, that not all Americans come from money. In fact, a lot of people barely have drinking water if we talk about Flint, or barely have internet if we're talking about Appalachia. And so I think these stories are incredibly important, especially for the coastal elites that live in New York City, or us being in San Francisco.
Right.
We live and breathe technology, but there are parts of the country that have no access to technology still.
Right. But my book really is a comeback story too. There is this downside, but on the other hand, there's tremendous progress. Mm-hmm. So I see this as the comeback story, a renaissance of the industrial Midwest with high tech.
Yeah.
And high tech having a huge impact throughout these cities.
I think we're in such an interesting place right now where we're in a period of discovery. You know, you can generate art and make hundreds of pieces of art without an art degree. Basically draft a cover letter, a resume, apply for hundreds of jobs without doing any work, really. You can use ChatGPT for that now.
No, it's scary, yeah. It might put journalists out of work and book authors out of work.
Not yet, hopefully not yet. I'm so interested in how quickly the world is moving, and you know, the first thing that came to mind for me was, how do we say this to people in the Midwest? You know, I think there's this concern that AI is going to come for us, it's going to take our jobs. But what I'm seeing firsthand is Amazon truck drivers, Uber drivers, people that go from earning an hourly wage to making 6 figures a year because they learn how to use this technology.
Yeah, if they get trained.
If they get trained.
Which is a big issue.
Yeah, if they get trained, or if they're encouraged to use it at all. You know, I've been spending a lot of time with the Warhol Museum in Pittsburgh.
Yes.
The reason being, they have modern curriculum where they're teaching people who are either, you know, in high school, recently graduated from high school, teaching people in the neighborhood how to edit videos, you know, how to write headlines and write social media posts. And there's all of this modern education that can be done without going into student loan debt. And so I think it's incredibly important to think about modern education versus maybe traditional expensive education, because the jobs of today already are quite different. We just need to get the, you know, the chat GPTs and the important technologies of the world into the hands of everyday people.
Yeah, AI can be a teaching tool, but it is kind of scary, I think, for a lot of people. They think, oh, AI is taking over, it's going to take my job. And it can take people's job if they don't think about the future and they don't train for it and they don't have the exposure to it.
Yeah.
They may be left behind.
Well, and one of my greatest concerns, and it's, you know, not next year or the year after, but even 5 years from now, where is Silicon Valley? Does it start to look like the Rust Belt, where you see, you know, the Salesforce Tower is mostly empty. You see middle of San Francisco is not a buzzing metropolitan place where people are coming in to work 9 to 5. If anything, people are working from home, or people have moved to a different place, or companies are choosing to hire people globally and they're not looking for that Bay Area based talent anymore. And so I do worry that maybe, you know, Silicon Valley will be the next Rust Belt if things continue in this direction.
Yeah, well, I think Silicon Valley housing prices contributed to this as well. But the pandemic definitely was a tipping point where people, you know, all of a sudden they wanted to be with family. They wanted a different lifestyle. They wanted, you know, some of them lost their jobs. And today we're seeing more layoffs in the tech world. So I think we're still seeing a lot of change happening around Silicon Valley, and there's some dangerous signs for Silicon Valley's future.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's interesting too, you know, my partner's a stand-up comedian, and so, you know, we live a very different life. I'm a venture capitalist, he's a stand-up comedian, and, you know, we live on the West Coast, but now that we've, you know, we keep going back to see my brother in Cleveland, or we see, you know, my parents in Youngstown, we now have this list that keeps getting longer of restaurants we want to try. Like, we're big foodies. You would assume, you know, someone who was born and raised in Hong Kong, and then myself who's lived in Sydney and San Francisco and spent a lot of time in New York, you would think we'd be bored in the Midwest, but our list keeps getting longer of like, wow, that Indian restaurant was awesome, or wow, we need to try this new Korean spot. And so there's so much happening there that we keep getting pulled back in, which is really awesome to see and very surprising for me as someone that couldn't wait to leave when I was in high school.
Sure. So my husband is from New York City. He's a lawyer in New York City, and so he went with me on a few of the little trips. He doesn't like to travel like me. And so I'm the one who's always the one who's out there traveling, doing overseas stuff, and oh, hi John, you know, I'm back home again, you know. But he went with me on a few of the trips, and he actually it was an eye-opener for him to see the Heartland and the kind of community and the warm spirit that's there.
I you know, fell in love with that city, and it's encouraged me to keep traveling in the Midwest and keep rediscovering it.